In August of 2008, the Illinois Department of Agriculture confirmed that the emerald ash borer was in Oak Park. Though not good news, it came as no surprise to Forestry Superintendent Jim Semelka. He began warning residents of the dangers of the beetle years ago and the risk of bringing it to Oak Park through firewood from Michigan, Indiana, and Ohio, where the borer has led to the destruction of millions of ash trees.
The way that the emerald ash borer affects the trees is that the adults lay the eggs right underneath the bark. When the larva hatches, then it consumes the actual vascular tissue of the tree. This interrupts the flow of nutrients and water up and down the tree. And as the larva continues to grow and continues to feed, it obviously gets bigger, the damage increases.
Adult ash borers gnaw their way out of trees in early June, emerging from D-shaped holes about 1/8 inch in diameter. The small metallic green beetles, about a ½ inch long, then lay their eggs on fresh bark, often traveling up to a ½ mile.
There are several typical signs that a tree is infected with emerald ash borer. One is they tend to die from the top down. Suckers, or water sprouts, tend to form lower down the trunk of the tree. This is a typical response of any tree to a wound, especially a vascular issue. Of the 2,600 roughly ash trees that we have on the Parkway, so far we've removed over the last 2 years only about 120. But if the infestation runs its typical course, as it has in a lot of other Chicago suburbs, anywhere within the next 5 to 10 to possibly 15 years, that entire ash population of 2,600 could be gone.
But what happens once the ash trees are removed? Well, in most communities, including Oak Park, they're ground into mulch, which keeps them out of landfills and provides some environmental benefits. But for residents that have to have diseased ash trees removed from their own property, there may be an alternative use.
Well, one of the opportunities, if it could be looked at that way, that emerald ash borer has presented to us is a possible source, a larger source and a new source of urban lumber that we could put to some higher uses, actual lumber, furniture, things like that. One big link in this chain are people like Bruce Horrigan, owner of Urban Forest Products.
Hey, Jim.
Bruce. Thanks for having us out today.
You're welcome. Thanks for coming. I've been an arborist for a long time. Started taking care of trees back in the mid-'70s. And when we first started, we were actually dumping this stuff in the landfills. And that bothered me. We started Horrigan Urban Forest Products with the thought of recycling as much of the tree as possible to the highest possible use. George, you want to start milling? We were milling the ash trees, which were some of the first ash trees that you guys found with the emerald ash borer. These trees don't have to be thrown away. The U.S. Forest Service did a study back in the 90s, and they determined that if we utilize the trees that are coming out of the urban forest within the United States, that would equal approximately 30% of the total hardwood production annually. Right now, we're throwing that away.
It's got almost like an oak type green to it.
That was diseased American elm.
How does it take stain and finish?
Beautiful.
Does it?
Yeah.
Residents considering turning their ash trees into usable lumber or furniture need to consult with tree removers first, because cutting a tree for lumber is different from simply cutting it down and hauling it away.
Some of the challenges that are presented in a higher use theory are several. One is that the actual removal or harvesting of the wood has to be different. Typically, lumber mills need a little bit longer than an 8-foot length of log, which obviously leads to the idea that this wood will have to be milled. All these things add expense.
We'll first figure out what's going to happen with the log, what we're going to make out of it, and then George starts into milling it, and he's cutting the different thicknesses. We do from 4/4, which is an inch, to 8/4, which is 2 inches. We typically mill, depending on the use of the wood. Flooring, paneling, you usually want the thinner wood. Right. These trees are coming down anyway, and so by utilizing these trees, we're actually saving trees from the forest. What we're doing is it's a full cycle thing where the tree is here in the Chicago area, it's coming down, we're hooking up with woodworkers who can make things out of it, and then it needs to be utilized by people in this area. And that's closing the loop on the cycle.
And everything stays local.
Yes.
So the tree's been removed and we've brought it out here and it's been milled. What's the next step in the process then?
We sticker it for air drying.
And what is stickering?
Stickering is we're putting little boards in between. As this air moves through, it pulls that moist air out so that then more moisture can keep on coming out of the log. Once we're finished air drying it, which can be a month to 6 months. Then we'll put it into the kiln. What we do is we put the big dehumidifier in there, and then we have a fan system. It's blowing the air across, and then it pushes it through here, pulling the moist air back out. This load will be in here about a month.
About a month. And what's the temperature like in here?
It starts out at 90 degrees, and then as the moisture content comes down in the wood,
right,
we raise it to 100 and then 120.
I see.
Once it's finished that, what we do is then we shut the compressor off and raise the temperature to 140 for 2 days. The reason we do that is that way it sterilizes. All insects and diseases are done with at that point in time. After that, we cool it down, and then we pull the woods out. That can then be made into anything from that point on.
So Erica, here we are in your warehouse surrounded by all this beautiful wood. What is different about the wood when it reaches this facility than up at the kiln?
Well, in this facility, we want it to stay dry. We do keep it in a moisture-controlled environment, so the wood isn't reabsorbing any water. We keep the relative humidity in here between 30 and 40%.
And all this, when it was still in tree form, these just come from residences around the Chicago area?
Correct.
And these are folks that are obviously just interested in preserving or making something from those trees?
Yes, absolutely.
There's so many levels to how this is environmentally friendly and actually historically saving.
So there's a lot of historical significance that we can preserve because a lot of them have stories.
Yes, these are hawthorns from down in Chicago, from the Chicago Park District. These came off of Columbus Drive. They'd gotten too large and were starting to fall over and be creating a bit of a hazard. But they tell a part of the history of Chicago, this part of the story of Chicago. They've witnessed a lot of things that have happened down there.
Sure.
So what we're trying to do is keep that history alive.
Well, here, Erica, I see some of the finished product. There are just some beautiful objects here. For instance, this stool, what kind of wood is this made from?
This is made from ash. This is actually some of what you'll be getting from the ash that you've had milled.
So emerald ash borer removals could actually turn into something as beautiful as this.
Absolutely.
Every day, trees are coming down, and we need people who want to keep that history and work with the environment to keep those trees to the highest possible uses. And what we're trying to do is help make a good situation out of a bad situation.